July 28, 1947, 9:14 a.m. A folded paper crosses a Harlem threshold. A patrol slows, eyes linger, and Bumpy Johnson lets the risk pass. Bumpy Johnson did not hurry the morning. He let Harlem come to him. The paper was already there when he arrived, folded once. Clean edges, ink settled. It rested on the corner of the desk like it had always belonged in that room. No hand guarded it. No eyes followed it. That was the first test. The paper waited. Outside, the street moved the way it always did. Shoes on concrete. A delivery truck coughing awake. A radio arguing with itself through an open window. Nothing reacted. That mattered. Bumpy stood where he could see the door and the desk at the same time. He did not touch the paper. He read the room first. He let silence decide whether the paper deserved to exist. A patrol car rolled past the front windows slower than usual. Not slow enough to accuse, just enough to notice. One officer looked in. The glance held for a breath too long. That was the risk. Brief, visible. Then the car moved on. No siren, no stop. Bumpy did not follow it with his eyes. The paper stayed. He sat. The chair did not creak. He had learned which chairs spoke and which ones kept quiet. He placed his hat beside the paper, but not on it, close enough to acknowledge, far enough to refuse ownership. The authorization claimed access. It carried a seal that most men trusted without question. It named a path through rooms that usually asked for names twice. The words were plain. That was the danger. Plain things get believed. A man entered and stopped when he saw the paper. He did not ask about it. He nodded once and kept moving. That was the second test. The paper passed again. Bumpy waited. By morning, the ledger would close. It always did. When it closed, what was written stood. What was not vanished. That was the deadline. No clock announced it. No voice reminded anyone. The city knew. Bumpy reached out and turned the paper 90 degrees. Not to read it, just to change its posture. He wanted to see if the room noticed. It did. A murmur moved through the back hall. Shoes paused. Someone cleared a throat and decided not to speak. The paper held its place. "This belongs where it goes," Bumpy said. He said it once. He did not explain what where meant. He did not say whose place it was. He let the sentence stand alone, the way a verdict waits before it is enforced. The man who had brought the paper appeared in the doorway. He was neat, too neat. His hands were empty now. He did not smile. He did not frown. He looked relieved to see the paper still breathing. Bumpy looked at him without asking his name. "Read it," Bumpy said. The man did not touch the paper. He read it from where he stood. His eyes moved fast, then slowed at the seal. He nodded again, smaller this time. "It's in order," the man said. Bumpy said nothing. He leaned back and let the room decide whether that sentence mattered. Outside, a bell rang somewhere down the block. A shop opened. Another closed. Morning kept moving. The paper remained untouched. Bumpy knew it would travel before noon. He knew doors would open because of it. He knew one door would not. That door would decide everything. He watched the paper and waited for the city to choose. One question stayed in the room, unanswered and steady. When the ledger closes, will the paper be inside it, or will the man who trusts it be left outside? The paper left the room without ceremony. It did not need one. A runner took it the way men take things they believe are already approved. 2 fingers, no hurry, no glance back. The door closed with the softest sound the hinge could make. Bumpy stayed where he was. He did not watch the door. He watched the desk after the paper was gone. Empty surfaces tell the truth faster than faces do. The corner where the paper had rested looked lighter, like something had been lifted from it. Absence has a color if you wait long enough. A voice drifted in from the hall. Someone asking if the path was clear. Someone answering yes without checking. That mattered more than the seal ever had. Bumpy reached for his hat and moved it to the center of the desk. He placed it flat, not claiming space, marking it. The desk accepted the weight. By noon, the paper would reach the first door, the kind that opens on habit. Habit does not argue. Habit recognizes shapes and lets them pass. That door would open. The second door would open too. It always did. That one liked stamps. It trusted ink. It had learned that arguing with paper took more effort than obeying it. The third door was different. The third door kept its own memory. Bumpy knew the man who sat behind it, knew the way he held a pen like it might betray him, knew he read margins before sentences. That door did not care about seals. It cared about whether it remembered granting what was being claimed. That was where the paper would slow. Someone came back into the room, not the runner. Another man, older, quieter. He did not ask questions. He did not need to. "They're walking it through," the man said. Bumpy nodded once. That was enough. The internal clock ticked without sound. Not minutes, not hours, just a narrowing. By morning the ledger would close. That was not a threat. That was weather. Outside the street grew louder. A truck backfired. Someone laughed too hard. A voice called a name and did not hear it answered. Harlem carried on, unaware that a decision was already leaning in one direction. Bumpy stood and went to the window. He did not look down, he looked across. At brick, at distance, at the way buildings keep secrets for each other. He spoke without turning. "Paper tells you who you are," he said. "Only if you let it." The man behind him did not respond. He understood that the sentence was not for him. An hour later, the phone rang once. Then again. Bumpy let it ring a third time before lifting the receiver. It slowed, a voice said, careful, controlled. "How slow?" Bumpy asked. "Enough." Bumpy replaced the receiver. He did not sit. Slowing was not failure. Slowing was exposure. The paper was being read by someone who did not trust it, someone who remembered. That was the confrontation Bumpy had planned without planning. No raised voices, no closed fists, just ink being measured against memory. If the paper passed, it would pass clean. If it failed, it would fail publicly, without noise, taking its holder with it. Bumpy returned to the desk and removed his hat. He placed it back where it had been before. The desk felt right again. He waited for the paper to come back changed, or not at all. One certainty settled into the room and did not leave. By morning, the ledger would tell the truth. The question remained, steady and unanswered. Would the truth be written, or would it be escorted away? The paper returned before evening. Not carried, presented. It lay on the same desk, folded the same way, but it no longer looked settled. The edges had softened. The ink had been handled. Someone had paused over it long enough to leave a trace that could not be seen, only felt. Bumpy did not reach for it. The man who brought it back stayed standing. He did not clear his throat this time. He did not pretend ease. He stood the way men stand when they know a thing has already been decided but not yet spoken. "It slowed," the man said again. Bumpy nodded once. He did not ask where. He did not ask who. He already knew which door it held. The third door always held. Bumpy moved around the desk and stood across from the chair meant for visitors. He did not sit. Sitting would have made this a meeting. This was not a meeting. This was a reading. "Leave it," he said. The man placed the paper down and stepped back. He did not leave the room. That mattered. Bumpy leaned in just enough to let the paper know it was being acknowledged. He read the margin first. A faint note. A correction that did not belong. The seal pressed twice. A mistake only made by someone borrowing authority, not carrying it. Bumpy straightened. The door opened without a knock. The holder entered. He was composed. He had chosen his clothes carefully. Nothing loud. Nothing new. He carried himself like a man who believed the paper would do the talking for him. Bumpy did not offer a chair. They stood across the desk from each other with the paper between them, like a line drawn on the floor that neither needed to cross. "You said it was in order," Bumpy said. The holder nodded. "It is." Bumpy waited. Silence does work if you let it. The holder shifted his weight, just enough to notice. "Read it again," Bumpy said. The holder reached for the paper. His fingers stopped halfway, then continued. He lifted it, unfolded it, and read slower than he had before. His eyes paused where Bumpy's had paused, on the margin, on the seal. He folded it again, not as clean this time. "It's approved," the holder said, softer. Bumpy looked at the desk, not at the man. "Approved by who?" he asked. The holder hesitated. That was the truth surfacing, not shouted, not forced, just visible. "A name," the holder said. "You know the name." Bumpy lifted his eyes then, calm, flat, certain. "I know the name," Bumpy said. "The name doesn't know this." The room accepted that sentence the way rooms do when something final has been said. The holder tried once more. "It can be fixed." Bumpy shook his head, slow, decisive. "Fixed leaves fingerprints," he said. "This stays clean." The holder swallowed. He placed the paper back on the desk. This time it felt heavy. Bumpy did not take it. Night pressed closer to the windows. Not urgent, inevitable. By morning the ledger would close. The paper would either belong or it would choose who didn't. Bumpy turned slightly, already done with the conversation. "Walk with it," he said. The holder did not ask where. One certainty settled into the room and held. This paper would not survive daylight unchanged. The question remained, unanswered and steady. When it reaches the ledger again, what will it erase? They walked without escort at first. That was deliberate. Bumpy let the holder carry the paper through the hallways on his own. He wanted the paper to feel confident. Confidence makes mistakes visible. Fear hides them. The floorboards counted the steps. The walls kept quiet. Men looked up, then looked away. No one spoke. No one needed instruction. At the third door, the walk stopped. The man behind the desk did not rise. He did not gesture. He did not acknowledge Bumpy at all. His eyes stayed on the paper before it even touched the surface. That told Bumpy everything he needed to know. "Set it down," the man said. The holder placed the paper carefully, like setting down glass. The fold was wrong now. The paper resisted being flat. Lies creased differently. The man behind the desk read without moving his head. Only his eyes worked. Slow, exact. He reached the margin and paused. He reached the seal and did not touch it. "This wasn't granted," he said. No heat, no accusation, just fact. The holder opened his mouth, then closed it. He had run out of prepared sentences. Bumpy spoke once, not to defend, not to accuse. "It passed 2 doors," he said. The man behind the desk nodded. "It would." He took out the ledger, heavy, bound, familiar. He opened it to the page that mattered. He ran his finger down the lines, then stopped where a name should have been. It wasn't there. The paper had nowhere to land. "That's the truth," the man said and closed the book. The sound of it closing was soft, but final. Bumpy did not look at the holder. He looked at the paper still lying between them. The paper had done its work. It had revealed who believed in borrowed authority. "There's no entry," Bumpy said. The holder's shoulders fell, not from fear but from understanding. He nodded once, the way men nod when argument has left the room. "I thought," he began. Bumpy lifted a hand, not sharp, just enough. "Thinking comes before paper," he said. The man behind the desk stood then. He pressed a button under the desk, not an alarm, a signal. 2 men appeared in the doorway, not uniformed, calm, familiar faces. They did not touch the holder. "Walk him out," the man behind the desk said. The holder folded the paper one last time. He looked at Bumpy, searching for something. Permission, mercy, explanation. Bumpy gave him none. "Keep it," Bumpy said. That was the consequence. The holder nodded and turned. The men walked with him, not close, not far, just enough to make the direction certain. When the door closed behind them, the room stayed quiet. The ledger remained shut. Bumpy adjusted the chair the holder had never sat in. He pushed it back under the desk, clean and unused. Outside, night settled fully. Harlem did not notice. It rarely does. Bumpy paused before leaving. One question stayed behind, unanswered and heavy. When the next paper comes through these doors, who will remember the one that walked itself out? Morning arrived without announcement. It always did. Bumpy Johnson was already dressed when the light found the windows. He did not check the time. He did not need to. The ledger had closed in the night. What survived it would show itself now. The paper did not. That absence mattered more than its return ever could have. Bumpy stood in the same room in the same position and looked at the desk. The corner where the paper had rested held nothing. No mark, no curl, clean wood, clean truth. Someone entered quietly and stopped. He waited to be seen. "It's done," the man said. Bumpy nodded. No question followed. Done had a specific meaning in this house. It did not mean finished. It meant resolved. "They walked him out before dawn," the man continued. "No trouble." Bumpy turned slightly, not toward the man, toward the window. "Which way?" he asked. "South," the man said, "on foot." That mattered too. Cars make memories louder than they need to be. Feet erase themselves. Bumpy looked across the street again. The city was waking. A shopkeeper sweeping yesterday into a pile. A woman adjusting a hat before work. Routine laying down its tracks. The holder would not walk these blocks the same way again, if he walked them at all. Bumpy took his hat from the desk and placed it on his head. He did not rush the motion. Rush looks like guilt to people who watch for it. The man waited. He knew better than to fill space. "They let him keep the paper?" Bumpy asked. "Yes," the man said, "folded same way." Bumpy allowed himself the smallest breath, not relief, confirmation. "Good," he said. The paper needed to travel with its owner now, needed to be seen and doubted in his hands, needed to explain him without words. Bumpy stepped toward the door. Outside, the street did not part for him. That was how he liked it. Respect that makes room draws attention. Respect that pretends you are ordinary keeps you safe. He walked one block, then another. He stopped where the pavement changed color, where a shadow stayed even after the sun moved. That was the spot. He did not linger. He only noted it. Places remember better than people. A car idled nearby longer than it should have. The engine was quiet. The windows were clean. Someone inside watched without making it obvious. There was the danger, brief, measured. Bumpy did not look at the car. He crossed the street at the wrong moment, forcing the driver to decide. The car moved on. Risk dismissed. Bumpy continued. By the time he returned to the room, the city had fully decided it was a normal day. That was the mark of success. When consequence blends into routine, authority has done its work. The desk remained empty. Someone had placed a ledger on it, closed, heavy, honest. Bumpy ran his hand over the cover without opening it. He did not need to see the page. The absence was enough. "He won't be back," someone said from the doorway. Bumpy did not answer. He sat, finally, in the chair that never betrayed him. He removed his hat and set it down where the paper had once rested. The hat fit the space without resistance. The paper had tried to claim permission. The hat claimed responsibility. That was the difference. A knock sounded once, not sharp, not soft, controlled. "Come in," Bumpy said. A man entered with news that did not need embellishment. "People are asking." "Who?" Bumpy asked. "People who like stamps," the man said. Bumpy nodded. That would happen. Curiosity follows gaps the way water follows cracks. What are they asking? Bumpy said. Whether the path is still open. Bumpy leaned back and considered the ceiling. He let the silence stretch long enough to teach patience. The path is clean, he said, that's all. The man accepted that and left. Bumpy stayed. The internal deadline had passed. The morning had judged. All that remained now was the shape the judgment would take as it moved through other rooms, other desks, other hands. He would not guide it. Guidance leaves tracks. The paper had done what it was allowed to do. Now the city would do the rest on its own. One certainty settled into him and did not move. No one would borrow that name again without remembering the walk. The question remained, quiet and unanswered. When permission appears next time, who will check the ledger before trusting the seal? By afternoon, the absence had spread. Not as a rumor, as a correction. Names adjust themselves when pressure is applied the right way. Doors recalibrate. Routes shorten or disappear. Bumpy watched it happen without touching it. That was the rule. Intervention after judgment weakens the judgment. A man who usually arrived early did not arrive at all. Another came late and left quickly. A third asked a question, then answered it himself and did not like the answer. Bumpy remained where he was. He listened to the building settle around the decision. Floors accept weight differently after something is removed. So do rooms. Someone brought tea. Bumpy did not drink it right away. He let it cool. Heat can be mistaken for urgency. He preferred certainty. When he lifted the cup, he noticed a small stain on the saucer. Old, nearly invisible. Someone else's carelessness. He turned the saucer slightly so the stain faced away. Keep it clean. The phrase returned without being spoken. A messenger arrived near dusk. Young, careful. He stood just inside the door and waited to be invited closer. They're asking again, he said. Bumpy did not look up. Who? People who didn't ask yesterday. That mattered. Yesterday decides today. Today only confirms. What do they want? Bumpy asked. To see the paper. Bumpy set the cup down. There is no paper. The messenger nodded. He had expected that answer. He left with it intact. Outside, a familiar figure crossed the street and did not look toward the building. That was new. Avoidance is a form of respect when fear would be too loud. Bumpy stood and walked to the window again. He watched the shadow he had marked in the morning. It had shifted, but not by much. The city keeps some shapes steady out of habit. A car passed, different from the one earlier, slower. Someone inside leaned forward, then leaned back. The danger brushed past again, lighter this time, less curious. That was the measure. When curiosity fades, authority has settled. Bumpy turned from the window and reached into the desk drawer. He removed nothing. He closed it again. The gesture was enough. Drawers do not need to be opened to remind people they exist. The room grew quieter as evening came on. Not empty, quiet, the difference matters. A final visitor arrived without announcing himself. He stood in the doorway like a man who had come to count something and found it already counted. It won't come back, the visitor said. Bumpy nodded, no. They'll talk, the visitor said. They always do, Bumpy replied. And you, the visitor asked. Bumpy met his eyes then, calm, unmoved, finished. I'll remember, he said. That was all. When the visitor left, Bumpy remained seated until the light faded enough to change the color of the walls. He watched the room accept night without resistance. He stood, placed his hat on his head, and turned off the lamp. Darkness filled the space evenly. No corners hid. The paper was gone. The habit remained. As he stepped into the hall, one final certainty followed him, quiet and complete. The city had learned the cost of borrowed permission. The question stayed behind, unanswered and patient. Who will mistake silence for safety? The next time authority goes unchallenged. The knight did not ask questions. It accepted what had been decided and moved on. Bumpy Johnson returned the next morning the same way he always did. No escort, no signal, no change in pace. Men who survive long learn not to announce continuity. Continuity invites testing. The room greeted him without surprise. That mattered more than respect. The desk was clear. The ledger was not there. Someone had already returned it to its shelf. That was correct. Ledgers should not be displayed after they speak. Display turns truth into theater. Bumpy removed his coat and placed it on the chair, not the desk. The desk was for work that still existed. The work here was finished. He stood for a moment, listening. Buildings talk when decisions are fresh. Pipes settle. Floors respond. Somewhere a door closed too carefully. Somewhere else a door did not open at all. The absence had matured overnight. A man entered with numbers that did not need to be read aloud. Bumpy glanced at the page once, then pushed it back. Later, he said. Later is a kind of judgment. It means survival without reward. The man understood and left. Outside, Harlem moved differently now, not slower, more precise. Conversations shortened. Questions arrived already answered. That is what happens when people believe the rules have memory. Bumpy walked to the window and watched a familiar corner. A vendor who used to linger packed up early. A runner changed his route without realizing he had done it. Habit rewrote itself quietly. That was the consequence. Not the escort, not the walk, not the paper folded wrong in the wrong hands. The consequence was adjustment. Someone knocked once. "Come," Bumpy said. The man who entered had not been seen in days. He looked smaller, not afraid, measured. "I wanted to be sure," the man said. "About what?" Bumpy asked. "That the path is closed." Bumpy considered him without heat. "The path is clean," he said. The man nodded. He did not ask the difference. He knew better. He left without shaking hands. Bumpy returned to the desk and opened the drawer again. This time he removed a small object, not the paper, something older, something that had outlived other decisions. He held it for a moment, then placed it back and closed the drawer. That was enough. A voice drifted in from the hall, someone laughing, then stopping. Laughter corrects itself when it senses judgment nearby. Bumpy sat. He did not think about the holder. Thinking keeps people alive longer than they deserve in memory. Absence teaches faster. By evening, the questions would fade. By tomorrow, they would be replaced by stories. Stories would flatten the truth, but the truth would not need protection anymore. It had already entered routine. Bumpy stood and turned off the lamp. He spoke one sentence into the quiet room, not loud, not meant to travel. "Keep it clean." The room accepted it like a rule it had always known. One certainty settled and stayed. Nothing more would be required of him here. The question lingered, unanswered and deliberate. When authority leaves no mark, who decides whether it was ever there at all? The quiet held. That was how Bumpy Johnson knew it was finished. No new faces arrived with questions disguised as errands. No paper appeared where it did not belong. The building breathed the way it had before the interruption, steady and unremarkable. Authority had returned to its proper state, unseen. Bumpy came in once more, later than usual, not to check, to confirm absence. Confirmation is different. It does not search, it observes. The desk remained bare. The corner where the paper had once rested showed no memory of it now. Wood forgets faster than people. That was a lesson Bumpy trusted. He sat without removing his coat. This was not a working visit. This was closure. A man passed the doorway and did not slow. Another nodded without stopping. Routine had sealed the event better than any order could have. Bumpy reached into his pocket and felt the familiar weight of nothing important. He did not bring reminders with him. Reminders invite nostalgia. Nostalgia invites weakness. Outside, a siren moved through the distance and faded. It had nothing to do with him. That mattered. He stood and looked once more at the room, the desk, the door, the empty space that had taught the lesson. The physical anchor had completed its work and disappeared, as all effective tools should. Bumpy adjusted the chair, straightened it without thinking, then left it alone. As he turned toward the door, a thought crossed him, not regret, not pride, measurement. The holder would remember the walk every time he folded paper, every time a seal appeared too clean, every time a door opened too easily. That was consequence enough. No further instruction required. Bumpy stopped at the threshold and paused. Thresholds hold weight. They remember who hesitated. He did not hesitate. He stepped out and closed the door behind him, not softly, not hard, correctly. The absence followed him only as far as the stairs, then settled back into the room where it belonged. Outside, Harlem carried on, unaware it had been corrected. That is how order survives. Bumpy did not look back. One concrete consequence remained, quiet and permanent. No one asked for that authorization again. The moral weight did not need words. It lived in habits, in roots avoided, in questions never voiced. The final question stayed with the city, unresolved and pressing in its calm. When power moves without spectacle, do you recognize judgment, or do you mistake silence for permission?